I'm Brittany, 22 female. I live in a small, quiet apartment that I rented specifically to be closer to my university campus, a little bubble of independence in a world that always felt dominated by my family. For the last 5 years, my life has been a relentless cycle of lectures, late nights in the studio, and meticulous model building to earn my degree in architecture. It was all supposed to culminate in one perfect day, a day where my family would finally see that my quiet dedication was worth something. Instead, that day became the moment I realized I was just a supporting character in their story, and it was time to start writing my own. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The fabric of the graduation gown felt heavy on my shoulders, a scratchy, synthetic weight that seemed to absorb the humidity of the late spring afternoon. I adjusted the cap on my head for what felt like the 100th time, the tassel tickling my cheek. Around me, the arena buzzed with the excited chatter of my classmates. Phones were held high, capturing selfies with beaming parents. Hugs were exchanged, tears of joy were shed, and proud whispers of "That's my daughter?" or "Look at my son," echoed through the rows. I scanned the seats again, a familiar, sinking feeling tightening in my chest. Section 204, Row G, Seats 1-4. Four empty plastic chairs stared back at me, a stark, silent testament to where I stood in my family's list of priorities. It wasn't a surprise, not really. Disappointing, yes. Heartbreaking if I let myself truly feel it, but not a surprise. A week ago, my brother Kyle, the 17-year-old soccer prodigy and golden child of the family, had announced his team had made it to the state semifinals. The game was scheduled for today, the exact same day as my university graduation, an event that had been on the family calendar for 6 months. I remembered the conversation at the dinner table vividly. "It's the semifinals, Brittany," my dad, Mark, had said, not even looking up from the local sports section of the newspaper. "Kyle's team is on the verge of making history." My mother, Karen, had chimed in with her usual bright, brittle tone. "The whole town will be there. It's a huge networking opportunity. Think of the buzz for the business, Mark, and for my listings." My dad owned a sports equipment store that thrived on local team spirit, and my mom was a real estate agent who believed every public event was a chance to hand out a business card. "It's my graduation," I had said softly, the words feeling small and insignificant in the air between us. "From a 5-year master's program, I'm the first person in our family to get a postgraduate degree." Kyle had just shrugged from across the table, scrolling through his phone. "They record the ceremony, right? You can just show us the video." I looked at him, at this boy who had effortlessly captured every ounce of our parents' attention and pride since the day he was born, and felt a familiar wave of invisibility wash over me. He wasn't malicious. He was just oblivious, wrapped in the comfortable cocoon of being the center of their universe. There was no argument to be had. The decision was already made. Their son's soccer game, a high school match that might lead to another high school match, was more important than the culmination of my entire academic life. So here I was, alone. My best friend Chloe was in the audience somewhere, a bright spot in the sea of strangers. She promised to scream extra loud for me. I clutched the program in my hand, my name printed in crisp black ink, Brittany Ann Miller, Master of Architecture. It looked so official, so final. 5 years of sleepless nights, of caffeine-fueled study sessions, of pouring my soul into blueprints and models that critics and professors had praised. I had won a university-wide design award last year for a sustainable community center concept. My final thesis project on urban renewal had been selected for a feature in a prestigious architectural journal. My professor, Dr. Alastair Finch, had told me I had one of the most promising portfolios he'd seen in a decade. None of it mattered. In the world of my family, these achievements were abstract and boring. You couldn't hang a journal feature on the wall like a trophy. You couldn't cheer for a well-designed floor plan from the sidelines. The ceremony began. Names were called, one by one. As the line shuffled forward, I thought about all the milestones they had missed, or rather, minimized. My high school valedictorian speech was cut short in their memory because Kyle had scraped his knee during the JV soccer game the same afternoon. The gallery opening where my design sketches were displayed was attended only for 10 minutes before they had to leave for Kyle's team dinner. Every success I had was a quiet, personal victory, celebrated only by myself and Chloe. Their pride was reserved for tangible, loud, and public wins, the kind Kyle delivered with every goal he scored. I tried to be understanding. My father, a former high school football star himself, saw his own unfulfilled dreams reflected in my brother. His store, Mark's Sporting Goods, was more than a business. It was a temple dedicated to athletic glory. The walls were covered in framed photos of local sports heroes, with the largest, most prominent display dedicated entirely to Kyle. My mother, in her own way, was just as invested. Kyle's popularity made her popular. Being the mother of the star athlete gave her a certain status in our small town, a status she leveraged with practiced ease in her real estate career. I, with my quiet ambition and academic pursuits, was an anomaly. An oddity they loved, I suppose, but didn't quite understand or know how to brag about. My achievements didn't translate into community standing in the same way a winning goal did. When the dean finally called my name, the applause from the crowd was a generic, polite roar. But then I heard it, a single, piercing whistle and a shout. "W.O., that's M.Y. Brittany." I looked out into the crowd and saw Chloe standing on her chair, waving her program frantically. A genuine smile, the first one of the day, broke across my face. I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and accepted the diploma, the heavy cardstock a solid, reassuring weight in my hand. This was real. I had done this, for me. As I walked back to my seat, the weight of the gown felt a little lighter. The emptiness in section 204 still stung, but it was a dull ache now, overshadowed by the sharp, bright reality of my achievement. I had spent so long seeking their approval, a crumb of the validation they showered so freely on my brother. I had contorted my stories, simplified my passions, tried to make my world of lines, angles, and theories exciting to them. It never worked. And as I sat there, holding the proof of my hard work, a quiet resolve began to form in my mind. Maybe it was time to stop trying. The ceremony ended with the traditional tossing of caps. Mine flew into the air with everyone else's, a small, dark square against the bright arena lights. A symbol of freedom. I had graduated, not just from the university, but from the desperate need for my family's applause. I didn't know it yet, but my real education was just about to begin. The empty chairs were not just a sign of their absence, they were the beginning of mine. After the ceremony, the crowd spilled out into the sun-drenched courtyard. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the joyous cacophony of celebration. Families clustered together, taking photos, laughing, and making dinner plans. I navigated the sea of happy faces, feeling like a ghost at a feast. My phone remained silent in my pocket. No congratulatory text. No "sorry we missed it" call. Just a profound, echoing silence from the three people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters. It was a silence I had grown accustomed to, but today it felt louder, more definitive. Chloe found me near the grand old oak tree where we'd agreed to meet. She ran up and enveloped me in a fierce hug, her bright pink dress a cheerful splash of color in my monochrome mood. "You did it, Architect Brittany. How does it feel?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with genuine pride. "It feels finished," I said, the word tasting bittersweet. "Thank you for being here, Chloe. Hearing you scream was the best part of the whole thing." "Are you kidding? I wouldn't have missed it for the world," she said, pulling back to look at me. Her smile faltered slightly as she scanned my face. Have they called?" I shook my head, managing a small, wry smile. "Nope, not a word. The game must be in overtime." The sarcasm was a thin shield, but it was the only one I had. Chloe's expression hardened with a familiar flash of indignation on my behalf. She'd been my one-woman defense team for years, the only person who saw the family dynamics for what they were, not just preference, but neglect. "That's just wrong, Britt," she said, her voice low. "I don't care if it's the World Cup. This was your day, a one-time thing. They have a game every weekend." I know, I said, and the simple acknowledgement made my throat feel tight. But it's Kyle. He's the star. I'm just the studious older sister. It was a role I had played for so long, I wasn't sure how to be anything else. We took a few pictures together, Chloe forcing me to smile as I held up my diploma. She posted one on her social media instantly, captioning it, "Congratulations to my brilliant best friend, Brittany Miller, Master of Architecture. So incredibly proud of this amazing woman. The world better get ready for the incredible buildings she's going to design." The likes and congratulate. Ori comments started rolling in from friends and classmates almost immediately. Each notification was a small balm on a fresh wound. It felt good to be seen, even by relative strangers. We decided to go for a celebratory lunch, just the two of us, at a nice Italian restaurant downtown that I had always wanted to try. It was the kind of place my mom would have called charming, but my dad would have found pretentious. As we sat down, I finally took my phone out of my purse and placed it on the table, face up. A silly, hopeful part of me still expected it to light up with a message from them, but the screen remained dark. "So, what's the plan now?" Chloe asked, steering the conversation to a brighter future. "Big job interviews lined up, moving to the city, taking over the world." "I have a final interview with Sterling and Vance next week," I said, a flicker of genuine excitement breaking through the gloom. Sterling and Vance was one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the country. Getting an interview with them was like being drafted into the major leagues. It's for a junior architect position in their downtown headquarters. It's a long shot, but... "A long shot? Brittany, you're a shoo-in," Chloe insisted. "They'd be crazy not to hire you. Your portfolio is insane." "Thanks," I laughed. "I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but it would be life-changing. A real salary, my own place, a chance to work on projects that actually matter. A chance to get away. That was the part I didn't say out loud. A chance to build a life so far removed from my family's orbit that their gravitational pull could no longer affect my tides." Our food arrived, and for a while, we just ate, the comfortable silence between us a stark contrast to the uncomfortable silence from my family. Chloe talked about her new freelance project, a branding campaign for a local startup, and her passion for her work was infectious. It was a reminder that there was a world beyond my family's suffocating expectations, a world where people pursued their passions and celebrated each other's successes without qualification. As we were finishing our dessert, a tiramisu we shared, I felt a familiar pang of guilt. Maybe I was being unfair. My dad's business was tied to the community sports scene. My mom's social and professional life revolved around her local connections. Maybe their presence at Kyle's game really was, in their minds, a non-negotiable obligation. I had always been the self-sufficient one, the one who never needed anything. Maybe they had just taken me at my word, assuming I'd be fine on my own. It was a narrative I had told myself for years to make their neglect more palatable. But today, it felt flimsy, a story full of holes. True self-sufficiency is a choice. It's not supposed to be a role assigned to you because someone else requires all the attention. I paid for our lunch, using some of the money I'd saved up from a part-time job as a drafter. "My treat," I told Chloe. "A thank you for being my one-person cheering section." "Anytime," she said, squeezing my hand across the table. We walked out of the restaurant and back into the bright afternoon. The celebrations on campus had died down, and the streets were returning to their normal rhythm. As we approached my car, I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing. The game would be over by now. They would be on their way home, either celebrating a win or consoling a loss. Either way, their emotional energy would be entirely consumed by Kyle. I realized with a sudden, cold clarity that I hadn't even factored into their day. My graduation wasn't a competing event they had to choose over. It was a non-event they had simply forgotten. The silence wasn't an oversight. It was a statement. I wasn't a priority. And as I unlocked my car door, I understood that this silence was the real graduation gift they had given me. It was the sound of a door closing, and I was finally on the other side, alone, but, for the first time, truly free. The drive back to my small apartment was quiet. I played some music, but the lyrics seemed to fade into the background, unable to penetrate the thick fog of thoughts in my head. I parked in my designated spot, grabbed my gown and diploma from the passenger seat, and walked up the 2 flights of stairs to my door. The moment I stepped inside, the silence I'd felt all day became amplified by the stillness of my empty apartment. I had pictured this moment differently. I had imagined my parents being here, maybe bringing a cake or some balloons, their faces filled with a rare, uncomplicated pride. We would take a picture, me in my cap and gown, flanked by my beaming family. I would unroll my diploma to show them, and my dad would clap me on the back and say, "Well done, kid." It was a foolish daydream, a scene from a movie, not from my life. Instead, I carefully hung the black gown on the back of my bedroom door and placed the diploma on my desk, leaning it against a stack of textbooks. It looked important and out of place all at once. I changed out of my dress and into a comfortable pair of sweatpants and an old t-shirt. The formality of the day was over. There was nothing left to do but face the quiet, anticlimactic evening ahead. I decided to call my grandmother to share my news. She was my dad's mother, a kind, no-nonsense woman who lived 3 states away. She had always been a quiet supporter of my academic ambitions. The phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice warm and familiar. "Brittany, I was just thinking about you. How was the big day?" "It was good, Grandma," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's official. I have a master's degree." "Oh, sweetheart, I am so proud of you," she said, and her genuine warmth made my eyes well up. "I knew you could do it. All that hard work paid off. Did your parents get some good pictures?" The question was a pinprick to my carefully constructed composure. They couldn't make it," I said, trying to sound casual. "Kyle had a big soccer game, the state semifinals at the same time." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear my grandmother's disappointment crackling through the phone. "Oh, Mark," she sighed, a familiar note of exasperation in her voice. "That boy and his sports. Brittany, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have been there alone." "I wasn't alone," I corrected her gently. "Chloe was there. She screamed loud enough for everyone." We talked for a few more minutes, and her unwavering pride was a lifeline. When we hung up, I felt a little better, a little less invisible. Someone in my family cared. It just wasn't the part of the family that lived in the same town. It was around 7 p.m. when I finally sat down on my couch, ready to order a pizza and watch a movie, a solo celebration. I picked up my phone to open the food delivery app, and that's when I saw it. The screen was lit up with a barrage of notifications. 37 missed calls, all from my dad, all within the last 20 minutes. My heart hammered against my ribs. 37. That wasn't an oops, forgot to call number. That was a the world is ending number. My mind immediately jumped to the worst-case scenario. Kyle, there must have been an accident at the game, a bad injury, something terrible had happened. My hands were shaking as I swiped through the call log. Dad, 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 mom, dad, dad. Then I saw the text message. It was from my dad, sent just a few minutes ago. All caps. "Come home right now." No explanation. No "are you okay?" No congratulations. Just a command, a summons. The panic churning in my stomach was quickly replaced by a cold, prickling anger. After a full day of complete and utter silence, of making me feel like I didn't exist, this was their first contact, an order. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. An accident would have been preceded by a different kind of text, something like, "Call me, it's an emergency." This felt different. This felt like anger, their anger, but why would they be angry at me? My first instinct was to ignore it. Let them stew. Let them feel a fraction of the powerlessness I had felt all day. But the sheer number of calls was unnerving. Despite everything, they were still my family, and a small, terrified part of me was worried something truly awful had happened, and this was their clumsy way of reaching out. My curiosity and a deep-seated, lifelong habit of obedience won out. I grabbed my keys, slipped on my sneakers, and headed out the door without changing out of my sweatpants. If they were going to summon me like a disobedient child, I might as well dress the part. The 20-minute drive to my parents' house was a blur of anxiety and resentment. The house I grew up in, a pristine two-story colonial in a manicured subdivision, looked exactly the same as always. My dad's oversized pickup truck and my mom's pristine white SUV were in the driveway. A large banner was strung across the garage door. As I got closer, I could read the words, painted in Kyle's team colors of blue and gold. State Championship bound, Geo Wolverines. 17 Kyle Miller. So they had won. Kyle wasn't hurt. The world wasn't ending. My panic dissolved, leaving behind a hard, heavy stone of anger in my gut. They had won their precious game, and their first thought wasn't to congratulate their daughter on her graduation, but to bark orders at her through a text message. I parked my car on the street, took another deep breath, and walked up the stone pathway to the front door. It was unlocked. I stepped inside, and the sound of my parents' raised voices hit me instantly. They were in the kitchen, arguing. This was not a celebration. This was a war room, and I had just been drafted. The scene in the kitchen was one of controlled chaos. My father, Mark, was pacing back and forth in front of the sliding glass door that led to the back yard, his face a thunderous mask of fury. My mother, Karen, was sitting at the kitchen island, her head in her hands, her perfectly styled blonde hair slightly disheveled. Kyle was slumped in a chair at the table, staring at his phone, but his usual relaxed posture was gone. He looked tense and miserable. The celebratory banner outside felt like a cruel joke. "There you are," my dad barked the moment he saw me, stopping his pacing to point an accusatory finger in my direction. "Did you not see your phone? I've been calling you for half an hour." "Hello to you too," I said, my voice dripping with a coldness that surprised even me. "And congratulations on the win, I saw the banner." I crossed my arms over my chest, refusing to be intimidated. The balance of power between us had shifted today, even if they didn't know it yet. I was no longer a child seeking approval. I was an adult who had been ignored and was now being summoned. "Don't get smart with me, Brittany," he shot back. "This is serious." "What is so serious?" I asked, looking from his angry face to my mother's stressed one. "Did Kyle get a red card? Did the trophy get stolen?" My mother looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "It's the scholarship, honey," she said, her voice trembling. "The one from Northwood University. They're rescinding the offer." I stared at her, confused. Kyle had been offered a full athletic scholarship to Northwood, a prestigious private university with a top-tier soccer program. It was the crowning achievement of his life, and by extension, our parents' lives. They had been insufferable about it for months, name-dropping the university at every opportunity. Rescinding? Why? Did he fail a class? "No, his grades are fine," my dad snapped. "It's because of his conduct, some ridiculous code of conduct violation. It's a witch hunt." I turned my attention to Kyle. He refused to meet my gaze, his focus still locked on his phone screen. "Kyle, what did you do?" He mumbled something I couldn't hear. "Speak up," my dad commanded. Kyle finally looked up, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "There was a video," he said quietly, "from a party a few weeks ago. Someone posted it online tonight after the game. The coach from Northwood saw it." My stomach clenched. I had a very bad feeling about this. "What kind of video?" It was my mother who answered, her voice barely a whisper. He was being destructive. At a party at the Hendersons' house. He and some of his teammates, they broke a very expensive sculpture." My father jumped back in, his voice rising in volume as he tried to reframe the narrative. "It was a prank, a stupid teenage prank. The Hendersons didn't even press charges. We paid for the damages, all of them. It was supposed to be over and done with." "We paid for it," I repeated slowly. "How much was it?" "That's not the point," Mark yelled. "The point is, the university is using this as an excuse to pull his scholarship. They sent an email an hour ago. They said the video shows a lack of character and respect for property that is inconsistent with the values of the Northwood athletic program. It's a disaster." A disaster. That was the word. not for Kyle's character or the fact that he had destroyed someone's property, but for the loss of the scholarship and the prestigious future it represented. I was beginning to understand the frantic calls. This wasn't about me. It was about what I could do for them. "So, why did you call me?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "What does this have to do with me?" My father finally stopped pacing and looked directly at me. The anger in his eyes was replaced by a desperate, calculating look I knew all too well. It was the look he got when he wanted something. "The money, Brittany, your scholarship money, the inheritance from your great-aunt." The air left my lungs in a sudden rush. Great-aunt Clara had passed away 2 years ago. She was my grandmother's sister, a career woman with no children of her own who had always admired my quiet, academic nature. In her will, she had left me a substantial amount of money, $100,000 to be exact, in a trust fund. Her instructions were explicit. It was to be used for my education and to help me start my life after graduation. The funds were set to become fully accessible to me on my 22nd birthday, which was next month. My parents were the trustees, meaning they had to approve any major educational withdrawals, but the money was legally and unequivocally mine. "You want my inheritance?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You want me to pay for Kyle's college tuition because he lost his scholarship for destroying property?" "It's not like that," my mother interjected, standing up from the island. "We're a family, we help each other. Kyle has worked so hard for this dream. We can't let one stupid mistake ruin his entire future. Northwood is his only chance." "His only chance," I repeated, a bitter low. GH escaping my lips. "There are other universities. There are community colleges. There are student loans, the same kind I had to take out to cover the part of my tuition that my academic scholarships didn't." "It's not the same," my dad boomed. "The Northwood offer was a full ride, Division I, this is his career path. Your aunt's money was for education, right? Well, this is Kyle's education. It's the perfect use for it." The audacity of it was breathtaking. They hadn't spoken to me all day. They had completely disregarded the single most important milestone of my life. And now, they stood before me, not with an apology, but with a demand for the money that was meant to be my foundation, my safety net, my head start in life. They wanted me to sacrifice my future to clean up my brother's expensive, character-deficient mess. The family myth I had been raised on, the idea that we were a team, that my parents' focus on Kyle was for the good of the family as a whole, crumbled into dust. We weren't a team. It was Kyle's team, and I was just the water girl, expected to be on the sidelines with a bottle of water whenever the star player got thirsty. Or in this case, a bottle of $100,000. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the silent kitchen with the force of a wrecking ball. My father's face went from calculating to crimson in an instant. "What did you just say?" "I said no," I repeated, louder this time, my voice ringing with a newfound strength. "It's my money. It's for my future. You are not using it to bail Kyle out of a problem he created." I looked at my brother, who was now staring at me, his mouth slightly agape, as if he couldn't comprehend what he was hearing. For the first time, I wasn't just his quiet, older sister. I was an obstacle, and I suddenly knew, with absolute certainty, that this was more than just a fight about money. This was a fight for my own life. The word no hung in the air, electric and alien. It was a word my parents were not accustomed to hearing, especially from me. My father's face cycled through disbelief, indignation, and finally settled on pure rage. "Unbelievable," he seethed, taking a step toward me. "Absolutely unbelievable, after everything we've done for you." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Everything you've done for me? What exactly is that? You paid for my food and shelter, which is the legal requirement of a parent. You haven't contributed a single dollar to my college education. I got scholarships, I took out loans, and I worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. Meanwhile, you've spent a fortune on Kyle's private coaches, his travel teams, his equipment. Don't you dare talk to me about what you've done for me." My mother gasped, placing a hand over her heart as if I had physically struck her. Brittany, that is a cruel and unfair thing to say. We have always supported you. You've supported me, I shot back, my voice rising with years of suppressed frustration. You didn't come to my graduation today. You didn't even call. Do you have any idea what that feels like, to sit there and see every single one of your classmates with their proud families while my assigned seats are empty? You didn't even remember it was happening until you needed something from me. That isn't support. That is, at best, neglect. Kyle, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. It was the semifinals, Britt. It was a big deal. And graduating with a master's degree in architecture wasn't? I rounded on him, my anger now a white-hot flame. I have spent 5 years of my life working toward this. It was also a big deal, Kyle. A bigger deal than a high school soccer game. But my accomplishments are always invisible to this family because they're quiet. They don't come with a cheering crowd and a scoreboard. Well, I'm done being quiet. I turned my attention back to my father. The trust from Aunt Clara is in my name. The moment I turn 22 next month, I have full control. Until then, you may be the trustees, but you cannot legally move that money without my consent for a purpose that isn't my own education or well-being. And I will not consent. Not now, not ever. Kyle can figure out his own future. Mark's face was purple with rage. You selfish, ungrateful child, he spat. You would let your own brother's dream die just to be spiteful. Spiteful? No, this isn't about spite. This is about self-preservation, I said, my voice shaking but firm. You want to talk about selfishness? You're asking me to hand over my entire future, the money for a down payment on a house, the funds to start my own firm someday, the cushion I need to take a chance on a job in a new city, all to fix a mess that Kyle made. A mess you would have grounded him for a week for if it didn't have financial consequences for you. You're not worried about his dream. You're worried about your bragging rights. You're worried about the failure of the family brand. My mother started to CR. Why real tears this time? How can you be so cold? We're your family. We're supposed to stick together. Sticking together doesn't mean I have to set myself on fire to keep you warm, I retorted, the words coming from a place of deep, sudden clarity. I have been the responsible one my entire life. I have never asked for anything, never caused any trouble, and have always made sure to be as little of a burden as possible. And what did it get me? Ignored, forgot. And now I'm being treated like a walking ATM. The answer is no. It is a complete sentence. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the front door. You walk out that door, you are no longer welcome in this house, my father roared at my back. You'll be on your own. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob, and turned back to look at them one last time. My father, radiating impotent fury. My mother, crumpled in manufactured sorrow. And my brother, looking utterly lost, the golden sheen around him finally starting to tarnish. Dad, I said, a strange sense of calm settling over me. I've been on my own for years, you just never noticed. I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. The click of the latch felt like a final, definitive severing. As I walked to my car, my legs felt unsteady, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. The drive back to my apartment was different this time. There was no anxiety, no resentment, just a profound, terrifying, and exhilarating sense of freedom. The next few days were a blur of practicalities. I knew I had to move fast. My parents were trustees of the fund for another few weeks, and while I was confident they couldn't legally touch the money for Kyle's tuition, I didn't trust them not to try something underhanded, to find some loophole or pressure me into submission. The price of my independence was immediate and absolute action. The first thing I did was call Chloe and tell her everything. She listened, her silence punctuated by occasional gasps of outrage. Good for you, she said when I finished. Seriously, Britt, that was the bravest thing you've ever done. What do you need? A plan, I said, and maybe a couch to sleep on if they figure out a way to mess with my apartment lease. My name was on the lease, but my father had co-signed it years ago to help me get approved. I immediately contacted my landlord, explained the situation without going into excessive detail, and asked what I needed to do to get a new lease solely in my name. He was surprisingly understanding and agreed to draw up a new contract, provided I could show proof of future income. That brought me to my next, most crucial step, the job interview with Sterling and Vance. It was no longer just a dream job, it was a lifeline. I spent the next 3 days preparing with a single-minded focus I had never felt before. I lived and breathed my portfolio, refining my presentation, researching the firm's partners and their signature projects. I anticipated every possible question, practiced my answers until they were polished but still authentic. This wasn't just about a job. It was about proving to myself that I could stand on the foundation I had built, without any help from my family. The day of the interview, I walked into the sleek, glass-and-steel lobby of the Sterling and Vance headquarters feeling a strange mix of terror and empowerment. But as I sat down with the 3 senior partners, the terror faded. I spoke about my passion for sustainable design, my vision for urban communities, and the intricate details of my thesis project. I didn't just present my work, I told the story of my work. They didn't just see a promising young architect, they saw someone who was hungry, dedicated, and ready. 2 days later, I got the call. They offered me the junior architect position, with a starting salary that was more than I had dared to hope for and a full benefits package. I accepted on the spot, my voice thick with emotion. I hung up the phone and just stood in the middle of my apartment, tears of relief and joy streaming down my face. I had done it. I had secured my own future. The price of independence was high, but the reward was invaluable. It was the knowledge that I was enough, all on my own. Armed with my official offer letter from Sterling and Vance, I felt like I was wearing a suit of armor. The document was more than just proof of employment. It was a declaration of independence. My first move was to secure my housing. I signed the new lease for my apartment, my signature clear and confident on the line that no longer had my father's name beside it. The landlord handed me a new set of keys, a small but powerful symbol of my new, untethered life. My next step was to deal with the money. My 22nd birthday was now just 2 weeks away. I contacted the bank that managed the trust and spoke with a financial advisor, explaining that I would be assuming full control of the account on my birthday and wanted to ensure all the necessary paperwork was in order. I also preemptively informed them that I would not be authorizing any transfers or withdrawals before that date, citing a family dispute to put them on high alert. The advisor was professional and assured me that the funds were secure and could not be accessed without my explicit, notarized consent for any non-educational purpose. The legal walls around Aunt Clara's gift were solid. During this time, my phone was a constant source of attempted manipulation. My mother sent a barrage of guilt-laden texts. "Your father is so disappointed in you," one read. Another said, "Kyle isn't eating. He's so stressed about his future. How can you do this to your brother?" They were followed by voicemails, her voice wavering with practiced fragility, begging me to reconsider and be part of the family again. I didn't respond to any of them. Each message was a painful reminder of the role they expected me to play, and each time I ignored one, the role felt more distant, more foreign. My father tried a different tactic, intimidation. He left a single, curt voicemail. "Brittany, your mother and I have been discussing this, and we're willing to compromise. We'll consider it a loan. You can draft a payment plan for Kyle. This is your last chance to do the right thing before you cause irreparable damage to this family." A loan. They wanted me to loan my inheritance to my brother so he could attend a prestigious university after losing his scholarship for bad behavior, with no guarantee that a 17-year-old with a sudden sense of entitlement would ever pay it back. The absurdity of it solidified my resolve. The final confrontation came a week before my birthday. I knew I couldn't just disappear. For my own peace of mind, I needed to close this chapter with a conversation, not just a silent exit. I needed to say my piece, not in anger, but with the cold, hard clarity of my new reality. I agreed to meet them at their house on my terms. I would come at 2 p.m. on Sunday, and I would be staying for no more than 30 minutes. Chloe insisted on coming with me, waiting in the car just in case. "Moral support," she said, "and backup if your dad gets crazy." When I walked into the house, the atmosphere was thick with tension. My parents and Kyle were sitting in the living room, arranged like a panel of judges. They had clearly rehearsed this. My father started, his tone artificially calm. "Brittany, thank you for coming. We think this has all been a big misunderstanding, fueled by emotion." "There's no misunderstanding," I said, remaining standing while they sat. I wanted the physical advantage of height. "I understood your request perfectly, and my answer remains the same." My mother took over, her voice soft and pleading. "Honey, think about what you're doing. You're choosing money over your family. Is that really the person you want to be? Aunt Clara would have wanted you to help your brother." "Aunt Clara left that money to me, specifically to build my future, because she knew I wouldn't have the same support Kyle has always had," I countered calmly. "And I'm not choosing money over family. I'm choosing myself, because my family has made it abundantly clear that they will not choose me." "That's not true," she cried. "Isn't it?" I asked, my gaze sweeping over the three of them. "Let's be honest. If I had come to you a month ago and said, 'I want to donate my entire inheritance to a charity,' you would have been furious. You would have told me I was being irresponsible and foolish with my future. But because the charity is Kyle, it's suddenly a noble family sacrifice. The only difference is what benefits you. It was never about me or my choices." I then looked at Kyle, who was fidgeting with the strings on his hoodie. "Kyle, I'm sorry this happened to you. I really am, but you need to own your mistake. You did something stupid and there are consequences. Losing a scholarship is a big one. Maybe you'll have to go to a state school. Maybe you'll have to get a job and help pay for your own tuition. Welcome to the real world. It's where I've been living for the past 5 years. Taking responsibility for your actions is a part of growing up." He looked up at me, a flicker of something, maybe shame, maybe understanding, in his eyes before my dad cut in. "That's enough," Mark said, his voice hard. "We are not the bad guys here, Brittany. We are a family that is in crisis, and you are refusing to help." "You're right, you're not the bad guys," I said, and their expressions softened for a fraction of a second. "You're just not my problem anymore. I came here today to tell you a few things, so there are no ambiguities. First, the answer about the money is final. It's off the table. Second, I have accepted a position with Sterling and Vance downtown. I signed a new lease on my apartment by myself. I am financially and legally independent from you. Third, I am going to be taking a step back. I need space. I won't be coming to family dinners or holidays for a while. I need to build my own life on my own terms." The silence that followed was heavier than any of the shouting matches. It was the silence of finality. My mother looked heartbroken, but I could see the gears turning in her head, calculating the social fallout of an estranged daughter. My father looked defeated, the rage replaced by a stony resentment. He had lost control, and he didn't know how to handle it. I placed a single key on the coffee table. "This is the emergency key to my apartment that you had. I've already changed the locks, but I wanted to return it as a gesture. We're done." I turned and walked out of the house for the second time, but this time, it didn't feel like a dramatic exit. It felt like a quiet, necessary conclusion. As I got into the car, Chloe looked at me, her eyes wide. "How do you feel?" I thought for a moment, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving a strange, quiet emptiness behind. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it wasn't sadness either. "I feel clear," I said, like I just walked out of a fog I didn't even know I was in. The ties were severed. The pain was real, but so was the potential. For the first time, the blueprint of my life was entirely my own to design. The weeks following the final confrontation were a study in contrasts. There was the lingering ache of a family fractured, a dull throb that would surface at unexpected moments, seeing a family that looked like mine at the grocery store, or hearing a song that used to play in our house. But that ache was increasingly overshadowed by the bright, vibrant colors of my new life. My world, once small and confined by their expectations, was expanding at a breathtaking pace. My 22nd birthday arrived not with a family party and a poorly chosen cake, but with a quiet sense of triumph. I spent the morning at the bank, signing the final documents that transferred Aunt Clara's trust into a set of investment and savings accounts under my sole control. The bank manager, a kind woman named Mrs. Gable, shook my hand. "Congratulations, Ms. Miller," she said with a warm smile. "This is a wonderful foundation for your future." I walked out of that bank feeling 10 feet tall. The money wasn't just a number on a screen. It was security, opportunity, and freedom all rolled into one. It was the foundation stone for the life I was about to build. That evening, Chloe threw me a small party at our favorite restaurant. A handful of close friends from university came. They toasted my graduation, my new job, and my birthday. There were no grand pronouncements or dramatic stories. They didn't know the details of my family implosion, only that I was starting a new chapter. Being surrounded by people who celebrated my successes without agenda, who were simply happy for my happiness, was a revelation. It felt more like family than my actual family had in years. Starting my job at Sterling and Vance was like stepping into a different dimension. The office was a masterpiece of modern design, a space that breathed creativity and ambition. My colleagues were brilliant, passionate, and driven. For the first time, I was in a place where my skills were not just recognized but valued. My ideas were listened to in meetings. My designs were debated, improved, and respected. I was assigned to a team working on a new public library, a project that focused on community engagement and sustainable materials. It was everything I had ever dreamed of doing. I worked long hours, but they flew by, fueled by coffee and a deep, abiding love for the work. I wasn't just a cog in a machine, I was an architect, helping to shape the world, one blueprint at a time. I used a small portion of Aunt Clara's money to pay off my student loans in one lump sum. The feeling of watching that massive debt disappear from my accounts was one of the most liberating experiences of my life. I was truly starting from zero, with no strings attached. I also hired a financial advisor to help me invest the rest of the money wisely, ensuring that it would grow and provide for my long-term future. Months passed. The texts and calls from my parents dwindled and eventually stopped altogether. I heard through the grapevine, the small-town network is unavoidable, that Kyle had ended up enrolling in a local community college. He hadn't gotten into another university with a soccer program. The video had done more damage to his reputation than my parents had anticipated. I felt a pang of sadness for the dream he had lost, but it was tempered by the hope that this dose of reality might be the best thing for him in the long run. Maybe, stripped of the golden boy status, he would have a chance to figure out who he really was, not just what our parents wanted him to be. One afternoon, about a year after my graduation, I received a tentative friend request on social media from Kyle. I hesitated for a long time before accepting. A few days later, a message from him appeared in my inbox. "Hey," it read, "saw some pictures of the new library you're working on. It looks really cool." I typed back a simple, "Thanks." He wrote back almost immediately. "Listen, Britt, I know it's late, but I wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. You were right. I was a jerk and I was stupid. I've been working part-time to pay for school and it's humbling. I get it now, what you were saying." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. It was the first crack of light in a long-closed door. I messaged him back, and for the first time in over a year, we had a real conversation, stilted and cautious at first, but honest. He was growing up. Maybe one day, we could have a relationship again, one built on mutual respect instead of a lopsided hero worship. As for my parents, I still don't speak to them. The damage there runs too deep, the patterns too ingrained. I mourn the parents I wish I had, but I can't build a healthy future on a toxic foundation. My peace of mind is more valuable than a forced family reunion. Today, 2 years after that fateful graduation day, my life is full and vibrant. My apartment is filled with plants, art, and the comfortable clutter of a life well lived. My career is thriving. I was recently promoted to lead a small project team of my own. My social circle is rich with friends who are my chosen family. I am happy.